Hello Vac fans, and welcome to the next video here from me, Steve, from Mad About Hoovers. And Mad About Hoovers can really apply to these because they're both Hoovers, and they really are Hoovers as well. Hoovers of old. These are the classic design of the 1960s. These are the Hoover 652s. This one here on this side is a 652A, and this one here is a 6525C. They are separated by about 10 years in age difference, although you wouldn't probably think that from looking at them because they look pretty much identical. But in fact, this one here was an early to mid 60s version. It's not an original cleaner, and nor's this, because they haven't got the original bags, unfortunately. I would have liked them to have had the original bags, but you can't have everything, can you? I did buy these some time ago, and they came as a bit of an auction lot. There was about 7 or 8 cleaners in there, and I think I got the 2 Electrolux, well, one of the Electroluxes I got upstairs, and 2 502s with it, but the 502s were scrapped now because they were no good. It's like sometimes you buy these old machines and you don't have much alternative but to have to throw them away because they're so far gone that you can't really do a lot with them. But I decided to keep hold of these 2 and clean them up as best I could. They haven't been sprayed or anything because I can't do anything like that. That's Dorian's department, you know, he does all the spraying and the really good refurbishments. I'm afraid I can't do respraying to save my life. I used to try doing it on old cars, I used to have them made an absolute hash of it, so I thought, well, we'll just leave them as they are. They still work. They're still 652s, they still do the job. They've just got a few battle scars on, let's just put it that way. It adds character. Let's just say that. So I decided to bring both of these down. I know this one here has had a review done a long time ago. I think it's the very first video on my videos list. Goes back to the very first one, was of this. This one here originally didn't have a headlight on it. There was just a blanking plate here on the front, and what I decided to do, because I had another 652A very similar to this that did have a headlight in, but not the rest of it wasn't very good, and it didn't have very good brush roll, I decided to remove the rivets, take the light bulb holder out and the wiring, and then take the lens out as well and put them in this machine. So this machine now has got a headlight on where it didn't used to. And that was a more involved job than what I thought it would be, trying to drill an old rivet out that, because the headlight bulb holder, it was actually riveted onto the motor housing on the old 60s machine. So I had to drill the rivet out, and then literally, because I hadn't got any more rivets or screws that would have sufficed, I had to super glue or araldite the new bulb holder into this, and it works absolutely fine. So I'm really pleased the way that's turned out, because now this 1970s version has actually got its own headlight. So these came about, the 652, in the 1950s, the late 50s it was, and they started with a pink version with a pink bag and a pink trim. And Dorian, on his channel, I keep mentioning Dorian, but Hooverlux is such a wonderful channel, and Dorian is such a wonderful guy. Everybody likes Dorian. He's such a likeable person, you know, he's really wonderful. And he does such fantastic refurbs on his machines. He hasn't really been collecting cleaners that long, but in the time he has, he's amassed such a large amount of cleaners and done so many refurb videos on the amount of time and effort he spends doing these old cleaners up. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Go on, off you go. She wants to go out. So I wish I was able to have the money and the resources and the garage and the workshop and everything to be able to do these up like Dorian does, but unfortunately I don't. I live in a small terraced house with no garage and no workshop facilities, so I just have to do the best I can. But anyway, the 652, as I say, came out in 1958 with the pink version. And then the next version to come along after the pink one in the early 60s was the grey, which was this here. But originally it would have had a grey bag on the back, and I think it would have had a grey cable. This isn't the original cable, unfortunately. This is a Dyson cable off a DC07. Because the cable on this machine was so damaged, I didn't have any choice but to have to replace it. This one here's got the original cable on, I think. It might do, I'm not quite sure actually. I know it's got an old plug on there, so I'm assuming it must be the original cable, but I know I changed this one. And let me see, what else did I have to check? I didn't really have to change much else. I mean, I got the motor out and stripped it all down and cleaned it all up and lubricated the bearings and everything. I had some bearings for the brush rolls as well, which I got as a bulk lot on eBay, about 10-15 pairs of bearings for brush rolls in these. So it had new bearings in the brush roll. They've had original belts put on them, and you know, in general they work pretty well for old machines. So the grey version was, as I say, that was the early towards the mid 60s, and then it was replaced by a greenish version, sort of, I forget what it was called, Swedish green or something. I know Alex has had, Pneumatic Vacuums had one of those in green before, and he had a very good version of it actually, in very good condition. And the green one ran from the mid to the late 60s, and then they replaced it with a blue one, a navy blue, which was coming into line with the, at the time, the Hoover Junior Dirt Searcher, and the later on the Hoover Junior 1346A used the blue bag as well, this had. And by the time the early 70s came, it had been renamed. I think it was the 6525 then. And then you had like commercial versions of it, which didn't have a headlight in. I don't think they had a speed switch either, because I don't think they didn't use the tools with them. And I believe they sold that commercial version as a vacuum cleaner for hotels and shops and that. And there was a later one that came out as well, which was like it had a bright orange hood and a black top here, and that was another like a commercial version of it, and that was long after these had been discontinued for domestic versions. So that was the commercial. I've never had one of those. I've never even seen one on eBay, so I'm assuming they must be very rare, and if there are any, then there's going to be only a few collectors that have got one. So let's get the camera off and we'll have a look at the differences between these two models, because there are little subtle differences. And then we'll put the little particles down, we'll have a push round. So, right, okay, so this one's the early 60s version. So this one of the first differences to note between the early 60s and the later versions was the power switch. On the early models it was here on the side, and you should just press that with your foot on the side there. But on the later models they'd moved it to here, so it had the what we call the Rolo switch, because it looked like a Rolo. If that was brown it would look like a chocolate sweet, wouldn't it? So they call this the Rolo switch, and the Hoover Juniors had these as well. So that was the first difference between the early ones and the later ones, and I believe it was from like 1966-ish that they changed over to this one, maybe 67. It was around about the mid to late 60s that they got rid of that style of foot switch and put that one on. Now the roundels are different as well. If we look at the roundel on this one was colour coded to match the rest of the machine, so it was like a grey roundel on this one to match the grey hood, and it would have had, like I say, it would have a grey bag, but unfortunately that would be all right on the early 70s version, which had a blue hood, but unfortunately didn't match this. So on the later ones they used a red roundel, a large size one, and originally this machine just came with this here, this headlight lens was the same colour as the hood. So there was no headlight, there wasn't even a bulb holder inside it or any wiring for a headlight. And I think with the fact that this was called the 6525C, it may have been one of the commercial versions of it that was used in hotels. That's what I think it might have been. This one always had the headlight on, and in the old days, earlier models would have had a silver trim across here as well. So I think this is one of the later second phase in the grey. The earlier one I've got has got the silver trim across here, but it's in very poor condition, that one is. So this is the way I use this one more. There aren't many differences on the handle. In fact, it's pretty much exactly the same between the two. Both of them have the same type of sprung-loaded bag holder on the back there, and you can see that. Yeah, they all seem to suffer from damage to the paintwork, where people put them underneath chairs and furniture, and it scraped the paint off. And again, the same thing happened with the hoods, because it was metal with just paint on it. This one here hasn't seemed to have suffered too badly actually with paintwork damage, mainly because it's a newer machine. It's not new. I mean, this is early 70s. This one is. Now, one of the other differences, and this was rather a large difference actually between the two, concerned. Where are we? It concerned the height settings. This one, being the early 60s version, only had two settings: thick pile and normal pile. And what you had to do was, you had to put, if you had a thick carpet, you'd push that up to thick, and then you would have to press down on the back of the handle, like so. Press the back of the cleaner down, and it would click down. And that would be now lowered into thick pile and raise the front of the cleaner head up slightly. Because in the early 60s, shag pile wasn't popular then. So they didn't need to have all these adjustments. Most carpets back in the early 60s were all quite short pile, or rugs. So, in order to put it back to the normal style, all you would do then is just press that down, and then it would click the front back down again for a short pile. Simple as that. Now, this one had, by the time we got to the late 60s and the 70s, there were longer pile carpets around. So Hoover had to cater for that with their machines, so they gave us more settings on the height control. So we had that setting, which effectively raised the floor head quite considerably at the front. I mean, you can see when I do that just how much it raised the front of the machine. So that was for shag pile, and then you had the second position, the third position, and the fourth position right up here for short pile. So it had 4 positions on that, twice as many as that one did. Both of them in the back used exactly the same method of bag. So we would undo our zip, and we would see the bag in the back here, paper bag. And it used the same method as the later models did as well. It had the bellows there and the rubber belt to hold the bag on. And again, it was a bottom fill. This one was exactly the same. So you'd undo your back. This is not a genuine bag, this one. And there we could see the bellows in the bottom there and the bag retaining ring. So it was pretty much exactly the same. They hadn't really changed that, except that they probably are replacement bellows because they look a lot newer. So there we go. That was the bottom fill paper bag. And the bag they used was the H1. Same bag as they used for the Junior. So although the Junior was a smaller cleaner and a cheaper cleaner, the bags for them were exactly the same size between the Junior and the Senior. Okay. Right, so now if I turn the cleaners over onto the bottom. So here we see the two undersides, and there is not a lot of difference. They are pretty much the same, with the exception of one area. They both had the speed switches, so you were able to push your tools in the back and it would speed up the motor on this one. In fact, the pink one was the only version that didn't have that speed switch. This one has it here as well. Inside, oh yes, we can see there is a difference here between the switches. Here we can see the Rollo switch design on the bottom, and there was the foot pedal switch. So that was a slight difference. The other difference concerned the height adjuster. So this one worked like on the later models with the retainer spring there, and like a slide mechanism that used to slide up and down and push the wheels in and out. Whereas this one here just used to use a retaining clip like that. I'm just going to have to go and get my cloth because I've now just got oil on my hands from off the wheels. And that's another problem with old machines when you do grease them up. They do get a bit oily, so let me just clean my hands off. But yes, what this would do, the pedal, if you wanted to go on higher pile carpet, you would press that pedal up like so, and then when you press the cleaner down, I'm not sure whether I can do it this way, but when you pressed it down, effectively that then pushed that clip onto the wheel. And then when you press the pedal down for shorter pile carpet, like so, that pulled back like so, and the wheels pop back up again. Just making sure there's no more grease on the carpet anywhere, actually. No, I'm okay. I think what it was, I must have put my finger on that area there where there's a fair bit of grease on. That's why sometimes it pays not to put too much on, otherwise this is what happens. Okay, right. Now, one of the other little differences here between the early 60s and the later models was the actual designation of model numbers. In particular, the serial number. On the older type of machines, this is the early 60s one, it would have that type. So it would say 652A, and the serial number of that would be JT473959. As it was pre-1967, it doesn't use the dating system that later machines used from 1967 onwards. So in order to date this, you would need a table, a little book, which had all the codes and the months that they were produced in. But I haven't got that, so I don't know exactly when this was made. All I can do is hazard a guess, is that it's from around about 1964. Because the earlier ones from 63 would have had the 62 and 63 would have had the silver trim across the front of the headlight and a slightly different bumper strip. The same as what the pink one had, that type of bumper strip. This one's got the later version. So I'm thinking this is around about 64, this machine. Now by the time we got onto the 1970s version, we had the more familiar type of stock label, which was this type. And we can see here that this is a 6525C, and the model number, the serial number is 0652, which is the model number, and then you've got the 401, and that's the year and month. So this uses the conventional style that we all know. So this says it's January 1974. So this was actually made in the same year that the Senior Ranger was launched. So this is a very, very late model, this one is, from 1974. And I think with the C part, the 6525C, that could have stood for commercial. I'm not exactly sure on that one. So maybe Hoover buffs that do know whether that was a commercial version could say. And whether it was only the commercial versions that had no headlight. Right. When we take off the bottom, we should be able to see that, again, there's no differences at all underneath there. It uses exactly the same spindle, motor and brush roll as the one from the early 60s. There was no difference, and even the Ranger that came afterwards used pretty much the same setup underneath here. So again, what I will do, I'll put the belts back on, because I say that I never store these with the belts on. I always take the belts off when they're in storage so that the belts don't stretch. So that's that one. And then this one here goes on like so. And now what I've done there, I've actually put it on back to front. If I turn the machine on now and then spun the motor in the direction that the motor turns, which is this way, look what the bush roll does. It spins backwards. So this is why you must always make sure that you put the belts on the correct way, which is that way. You turn the motor in the way the motor would spin, and then you see the brush roll turns the correct way. Right, I should now put the base plates back on. I think that's the one off this one actually, I think I've got them mixed up. That's it. So really, I mean, there wasn't really much other differences between them. Hoover didn't change them that much over all the years. So let's put the camera back on the side and we'll turn them on and look at them both running. Right, there we go. Let's, and I'll plug the other one in as well, and then what I'll do, I'll put some test particles down in front of them both, and we'll see which one agitates the best. I'm not sure whether it'll be this one or this one. We'll soon find out, won't we? So, let's just check on the camera there that we can see both of those properly. Yes, we can. I will just do that, and I'm going to start them up now. So that was one way, eh? I've been able to get your cleaning done twice as fast. Use two at the same time. How about that? You've got double the cleaning width there, and double the light. Right, let's put the little test particles down in front. Put the rice down. And a bit of couscous as well. These are good particles, these are, for showing how good the agitation was. Right, now what I'll do, we'll have this down on the carpet. I'll push this one over first, and then I'll push that one over and move the camera across. Okay, so let's go with the this one here first, the 1974 version, the 6525C. That was really, really, really impressive, that was. I've got to say. Right, let's do this one then, on this side. So I will put the camera down here again. And we'll see what this one does. This is the 1964 version, this one is. Absolutely fantastic, that. They really did beat as they swept as they cleaned, didn't they? So let's just have one more push round. We'll use the 1974 version in the room here. Okie dokie. There we go. It's still able to clean it really well after all the years, and this one is as well. So fantastic performance there from both cleaners with that test. And my time is up now. I shall have to end the video because we're running out of time. So from me and them, bye for now.